Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. Cornwall's world-famous Kneehigh Theatre Company was due to celebrate its 40th anniversary in 2020, but the COVID-19 pandemic forced them to postpone any celebrations. After 5 months of lockdown and still with no sign of theatres reopening fully for indoor performances, Kneehigh has reassessed its place in the current world as storytellers, entertainers and artists, and come up with a strategy for how it will operate as an organisation in the immediate future. Just after the strategy document, which has been titled Strike Out, was released in August 2020, I spoke to Kneehigh founder and co-artistic director Mike Shepherd over, as he put it, the dreaded Zoom. First of all, it's Kneehigh's 40th birthday, which I don't know how you feel about looking back that it's 40 years. And you had some celebrations planned for this year, but things didn't quite work out as planned, did they? What was it you were planning for this year?
Well, yeah, you're right. Mind you, it's certainly, we're not going to forget our 40th year, are we?
No.
We've certainly marked it in a kind of very memorable way. We were going to have a celebration. We were going to have our asylum, which is, a place for events and excitement where anything can happen. We were going to have a Kneehigh band. We were going to have, a lot of the people that have made Kneehigh what it is over the best part of 40 years, and a whole host of shows. So, yeah, we'll put that on hold. But what I am trying to do, which I think will be possible, which is this place, which are the barns, which are, no, I don't think it sounds poncy. They're kind of our spiritual home, if you like. They're where your soul gets nurtured. And I've actually been, various ones of us have congregated socially distanced around a fire and sat under the stars. And it's been such a tonic again for people, because this is pertinent to now, because the great Ken Robinson has died recently. Yeah. Who, you talked about Liverpool. He was from Liverpool, wasn't he? And he is someone who has been such an inspiration, although decades before I ever had heard of Ken Robinson, I kind of learnt about the conditions of creativity and how important it was to nurture creativity. And we've had these barns for most of the 40 years, and particularly myself and Emma Rice have always, we've always found it, whenever we do co-productions, you turn up somewhere, you're let into, even nationally, so slightly controversially, or I'm sure it's lovely there now, but you think, oh God, this is a bit grotty, and we'd arrive somewhere with a group of actors, and the first thing we do is probably go out to the local market. I'm thinking about Leeds and the brilliant local market there to Leeds Palace, and we'd buy things to eat, we'd buy fruit, we'd buy flowers, and we'd literally get paint and decorate, clean and decorate that space, and ideally get some windows open. And these simple conditions of creativity, as what do we kind of need? I'm sat in the barns now, and it's a horrible day, but there's a few twinkly lights around, if you like. Yeah. But there's sort of images, there's stuff everywhere, and that up there is the wooden frock, as worn by Mandy Lawrence in The Wooden Frock. Well, in this barn, we tried any number. The story of the wooden frock it's a fairy story, a Calvino, and basically it's one of the Cinderella stories, but I won't bore you with the whole story. But the child has to escape her father, and her nurse builds her a wooden frock that she sails away on. And God, what's the wooden frock going to be like? And we tried all sorts of things, and then Mandy Lawrence, the actress, couldn't move in it, or it was a bit clunky. And then someone, actually in this very room, there was copies of Illustrated Living, and someone was flipping through in a coffee break, and there was an article on 1960s furniture, and there was a coffee table of concentric rings. Yeah. And we thought, there we are. There it is. So that became the wooden frock. So basically, I was never just an actor. I was always a teacher as well. So I started Archway Comprehensive, and they just ignored me. The kids, they weren't naughty, but I was in a Nissen hut, and again, I remember thinking, "Oh God, this is great! I'll clean it," and I did decorate it. I put lighting states in. I showed films. I played music. I even brought in a baby belling, and I cooked delicious snacks. Now, this is a long time before smartphones and selfies, but the thing that slightly depressingly got them was the fact I had a Polaroid camera. So I started taking pictures, and they wanted to see the pictures of themselves. And then we went out into the streets, which had been cleared at that time for redevelopment. And it was streets of galvanized iron.
Yeah.
And we literally started doing photographs in front of the galvanized iron, and then corrugated iron, and then we did graffiti, and then it moved into dance, and we were away. And I guess I learned back then how important the conditions of creativity are, and how important it is to teach it and how it can be taught. So here's to Sir Ken Robinson and that brilliant TED talk, which was "Do Schools Kill Creativity?" And of course, well, let's not talk about that, but creativity should and must be taught, whatever it is you're doing. It doesn't just need it for the arts. It's a way of being. So this is a way of sort of saying, where are we now? And, you know, I kind of had, when Mr. Oliver Dowden, and I'm not sure how much he knows about theatre or anything much, but when he announces that, you know, you can perform outdoors, there was quite a lot of, okay, so what's the idea? And, you know, you can put, and yes, we can perform outdoors, but you don't just slightly, desperately get out there because some half-baked moron in the government has said you can. This is a troubled, sensitive, extraordinary time that, you know, we're you'll have gone through it as well. I don't know if you've got family or whatever, but we're all, you know, the bigger picture is, my God, the recession, you know, mass unemployment, climate change. So we want to tread carefully, and we want to, I want to take care of those artists as I've always done. And I think we've ended up with a culture of very few companies, and by company I mean, you know, a group of people committed to each other and going on a journey and hopping on and off the bus. There are very few companies. There are lots of freelancers with agents that are hoping that might come off, or that might come off, or I don't want to commit to that because that might happen, which is very, very different from Kneehigh's beginnings. I was in, the dreaded Zoom yesterday, and of course there was no money. And I wanted to say, because I'm down here, we're near Mevagissey. In the early days when we were a bit broke, a few of us would go down onto Mevagissey Quay this time of year, and we used to do 3 cowboy songs. I used to do Mule Train, Hit My Head with the Tray. Yeah. We'd pass that around, and then we'd have a brilliant evening in the pub. You know, there was a simple thing about that. So on the one hand, I'm not saying, let's just get out there, but apart from anything else, it's mobbed down here. I did say to the brilliant puppeteer Sarah Wright, well, we have got a puppet booth from Dead Dog in a Suitcase. Go on, you get the puppets out. I'll do the voices. We'll pass the hat round. And then I took one look at the people out and about in Cornwall. I thought, no, I'd rather not do that at the moment. But it is a troubling time, and it's been going on for quite a while with theatre. You know, we mentioned Ken Robinson, we mentioned last time we spoke Liverpool. And Liverpool, what a brilliant place. But, you know, how did that happen? Deborah Aiden and Gemma Bodeners, who were Women of the Year, Sterling Architectural Award for, you know, award-winning ensemble. And now it's all sort of disappearing. And I valued those women so highly because Dead Dog in a Suitcase and Tin Drum would not have happened without those women. And I don't know who else would take those sort of risks. I don't know if you've listened to any of them, but Emma with Wise Children has been doing these tea and biscuits where she's sort of got in touch with all her old allies and friends. And it's nice. It's a bit like Desert Island Discs. You each choose music, and the idea is that you're having tea and a biscuit and having a chat. But she was talking to Paul Cruz, who was our executive producer, and they were remembering when him and Jude Kelly were at West Yorkshire Playhouse and asked me and Emma to come up. And they said, we'd like to commit to Kneehigh over the next 3 years and building an audience in Leeds, which they did. And that just meant they booked the shows, they co-produced some of them, and they built an audience in Leeds that is still there. It's a simple equation, but that very rarely happens. You have to kind of fit in now to people's programming, etc. So I think theatre needed reinvigorating, and I really hope that they can open again and they can tap in more to their communities and extend from there rather than just trying to do the next best thing. And with 40 years, it's a funny old thing, isn't it? I'm less interested in looking back at the moment. I want to look forward.
Yeah.
What is it we're doing next? So,
well, I noticed a lot of theatre companies, when this happened, they desperately went into their back catalogue and found old recordings, some of them better than others. But you haven't done that. You've created new things that work in different ways, not just online, but using some new technologies as well.
Yeah, and there's pressure. I'll be interested to see what happens with Wise Children who are online streaming Romantics Anonymous, and they've rather brilliantly found the technology to make that more affordable. And, there was pressure on me going, oh, God, we can do it. We can do Tristan and Isolde at the Minac. We can wheel that one. And in some ways that could be exciting. And in some ways you go, well, yeah, there might be. Well, there is, isn't there? There's a global audience for Poldark. We could tap into them to see behind. And in some ways you go, absolutely, you are reaching people that would not normally go to theatre. But that isn't what we do. And that's not least because Carl and I that are running the company, we love cinema, as does Paul Hunter loves cinema, and we absolutely love to make a film, but I don't want to just point a camera at a theatre show and call that a film. I'd love to make some cinema. Perhaps that's what we'll do. We'll make some cinema, but no, what are we going to do? Everybody started saying, what's your strategy out of COVID-19? And I basically said, well, to have a strategy, you have to have a degree of certainty and you have to have so many facts. So I haven't got strategy. Down in the barns at the moment, all around those beams are sheets of paper that I first made in lockdown, I called them hypothetical plans, and things keep changing really. But I then drew a diagram which people struggle to digitalize. I don't see why, but I did a diagram that made sense to me. So the bigger picture is to put our asylum up for a long period, May, June, July, August, September, in central Cornwall. And the idea is festival. And sometimes there might be a party on, sometimes there might be a show, sometimes it might be food in a bloody good bar. Sometimes we might show a film. We might do a youth theatre show. We will do shows of our own. We might do sculptural installation. We might host other shows. But it's there, this place that welcomes all. And it will be in central Cornwall. Having said that, the asylum was always a way of thinking. So, before we actually had the tent, we would create asylums. We did one at Battersea where you're there for a residency and it's more than just a show. You get a band, you get food, you get games, you get little mini installations, and you're there for a season. And apparently we might well be part of the Coventry Year of Culture doing that as well. So if I now rail back to that's the bigger picture next summer, what's been happening now? Well, the first thing that happened were long weekends. So 4 or 5 artists, creatives, revered accomplices at a time would come to these barns and they get the most delicious food cooked by a guy from Bristol, Krishna, who's moved to Mevagissey and he's turned an old fisherman's pub into like a cool New York bar and a bakery. And he's reinventing the nature of pub. So you go there for special events, like it might be a music evening, or it might be particular food he's cooked. And it's all quality goods. He knows everything about sustainable and seasonal food. I've been working with him and the National Trust here at the Barns because they've changed their policy from using their land to graze cattle to people and conservation. So we'd started putting on event. We'd started doing cookery courses with sustainable seasonal food. We've plans to plant an orchard, which will become a storytelling orchard. We've plans to create wind-driven sculptures with Cornish artists. So there are plans going on here, and with a very localized team of brilliant people and artists. So there's the long weekends, people stayed the night, plenty of, observing social distancing and sanitizing, etc., etc. Then we had 3 weeks of what I'd call getting our house in order. And we've got this place really fit for purpose again. So we've decluttered it, and it's a place to be creative and to make. And we've gone through absolutely everything, and we've adapted things. We've got stores, agricultural stores, which we've also gone through. And there's a brilliant young guy who was the stage manager for Sonia Friedman on Harry Potter, who's looking to do things differently. And he worked with us on Ubu earlier this year, and I brought him down and I showed him these stores, and every other person who looked at those stores went, fuck, oh, what are you going to do with that? He took one look and he went, I can sort this out. So we built a little team around him, including people like myself and Giles King, long-time Kneehigh people.
Yeah.
And we've gone through those stores and we've chucked stuff out. We've donated stuff to other companies, and we've created a kit of stuff, which means initially we can go out in the field just outside these barns and perform by firelight. I want to perform by firelight. And yeah, we will film it, and maybe we will share some of that because it could look beautiful. So we've had long weekends, house in order. The next thing is recovery, because I think, myself included, God, it's a long time since we've been running around and falling over and having a laugh and singing a song and doing a dance and being a performer. Yeah. So we're going to work in September in a couple of weeks. Paul Hunter's coming down to play with us. Kneehigh's always done training, and that can be anything. From we can work with an artist and go out painting, or we can be studying mime, or it's music based, or Northern Soul. We did some of that. We did some martial arts. So we've always done training, and that's always fed into the shows. So we're going to have a play with Paul Hunter, and both of us, I guess we sort of, the physical performance side of things, which has always been with Kneehigh, because we've performed outdoors, and I'm not that interested in just watching something where people are talking all the time, simplistically. But it's Jacques Lecoq, actually, who said about commedia, it's the essential of theatre, where humanity is trying to eat, trying to procreate, and desperately trying to avoid death. And I take a sentence like that and I go, well, that is funny, and that is very fitting to now.
Yeah,
and it's kind of what we do. And it then kind of pitches whatever we're going to do for an audience, because there's darkness there, etc. So, I've just been thinking about it now, and I've looked at some of those Calvino stories again, which Calvino, I think it was in the 60s, he walked throughout Italy and collected stories from people and then rewrote them. And there's one where an old woman is by the side of the road and she's eating her pea soup, and a starving child comes and says, please, missus, give me something to eat. And the old woman says, fuck off. And the child goes, I curse you. And all the peas in the bowl turn into 1,000 starving children going, we curse you. And she gets her mortar and pestle and she grinds them all up. And then at the end she goes, oh, damn it, I wish I'd kept one. And then this little voice says, please, missus, spare me. And it's Pete the pea. So there's this tiny pea-sized boy, and they become a kind of dynamic duo, robbing the rich. And there's something in that. It's about, I mean, I don't know if you did, but certainly at school, as a school kid, I struggled with Shakespeare. Yeah. And then suddenly Chaucer came along, and it was funny and it was baldy, and suddenly I could understand it. So it feels a bit like Chaucer. It feels a bit like the Canterbury Tales or Decameron or whatever. And I think those sort of stories and make them contemporary as well. You know, I was just playing around. I always make playlists, and Dua Lipa, I don't know if I pronounced that properly, but there's a funky new track from her about levitating, and that's perfect for the entrance of the old woman. So don't go medieval with it, you know. And these little 20-minute stories that kind of have meaning and reflect possibly where we are. And with what's going on at the moment, is it a starving child? Is it a child floating in on a rubber ring with a makeshift paddle, you know? Are we going to grind all those people down, or are we going to show empathy? Are we going to be kind? Yeah. And I think at the moment, like you say, and I'm sure that's brilliant, Jesus Christ Superstar at Regent's Park, that's great. But what you referred to earlier about dusting off a show and going, right, we can get that out again. I do want to do something that is reflecting these dark times and somehow gives some hope and is contemporary. As always, it should be funky, and it should be a new way of performing, which isn't buying your ticket and sitting in an auditorium. It's going to be, in this case, moving around a film. You could watch 20 minutes there, you could watch another 15 minutes there, etc. We'd already started doing this a bit with Ubu. Did you ever see Ubu?
Yes, I saw that when he came to Manchester, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Manchester, we went indoors, but prior to that, we'd been in the Marble Factory, we'd been in the Asylum. So it was kind of rougher. It was not a theatre audience. And yeah, that notion that the bar stays open and you stand, and actually you could come and go as you want. There was something in that, don't you think?
Yes, yeah. It certainly worked for that piece, yeah. It was the right atmosphere for it, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Even at the Lowry.
Yeah. Well, and again, you see individuals make it. I mentioned Paul Cruz and Jude Kelly, but I think he's called Mark something. The guy who's the program in there, just being enthusiastic about it. Yeah. And, you know, he was there most nights. Those individuals can really fire up those buildings. So I think individuals can and need to make a difference for theatres. It's recovery with Paul Hunter and then refuel and doing prototype performance, not putting a load of pressure on going, this is a new show with a new production with no production budget and no time to rehearse. But we're now going to share this with invited people in this field and see what we've got with a view to the future, but not going, obviously not trying to book a tour. And then the final thing, mark our 40th year, is to span the years. So at the moment, the plans are still formulating, but I want to turn this place into an installation that would be a little bit like Punch Drunk, and you book by appointment, and it'll be 2 weeks in December and 2 weeks in January, and you go on a journey, and it will be curated by artists, and it will be curated by those people that have made us brilliant. And yeah, there'll be little installations, there will be bits of poetry and performance. There will be some sort of photographic exhibition of the 40 years. There'll be projection. There'll be audio. There'll be Craig Johnson, who does a brilliant, annoying character called Colin Pickering, who's a second homeowner that's moved to Cornwall to make a difference. And he'll do a lecture on 40 years of Kneehigh Theatre, which will be very funny. And yeah, we'll do those firelight stories. And yeah, just little moments of poetry, like a puppet that burns with a bright green flame we've come up with in lockdown, my partner Sarah Wright. And, you know, you watch this man falling and then you stick an earth next to it and a spinning globe, and it's by firelight, and you've got a new song as well. And that kind of really resonates, I think. And I've been encouraged because I don't know if you've heard of the People's String Foundation in Cornwall. It's a guy called Ben Sutcliffe and another guy called Zaid. They did the music for FUP. But I went to see them on, there's a beach called Kneehigh there was a pop-up bar and a bit of a canopy. And they were playing to tourists. And beforehand, they talked about with two of the People's String Foundation, and we're not actually playing feel-good music or covers to cheer you up, but this is all our original music that we've written over the last few years. And they included songs that they'd written in response to the refugee crisis. And it was really, really melancholic. And I thought, this isn't going to go down well, people on holiday. But it really did go down well, which I thought was really interesting. The sort of mood out there is, no, don't necessarily try and cheer us up and make us forget about ourselves. So it's sort of in that area. And then all those shows I've put brackets around. So, we were due to be rehearsing now in Liverpool with Gemma at Liverpool Everyman, Wagstaff the Wind-Up Boy, which is a boy, might have been played by a girl, or a girl so horrendous that her parents run away and join the circus. And then she goes to play with traffic on the motorway by throwing eggs at windscreens and gets run over and then rebuilt by a brilliant NHS nurse, but is now Clockwork. It's a sort of bizarre kind of Tim Burton type story, which would be a family show, which absolutely should be about being good, actually, in the end, showing empathy, being kind. China, this is a good one. China would like a double opera bill. They'd like to put on, with the same rep company, Dead Dog in a Suitcase and Tin Drum.
Right.
They also phoned me and said, we very much would like to invite you back next year and we'd like you to play in Wuhan. What do you make of that, Dave?
Okay.
I want to play in Carmarth Quarry, which is Campbell and Redruth area. And it's a quarry that was going to be turned into bulldozed for road chippings. And a local group years ago, we helped turn that into an auditorium. And it's a makeshift auditorium with a brilliant sort of quarry face that you could project. One thing that's resurfaced that you might be interested in, it's only half an hour long, but it resurfaced from God knows where on YouTube. There's a Kneehigh documentary called Imagination Burning. And there's some shots there of Carmarth Quarry with this dramatic rock face. And you look at what we had, and it was myself, the dear Bill Mitchell as well, and Emma Rice, and you think, well, we had a structure to get height. We had a few bits of other platform there. There's a few par cans, and there's fire. And then we've got heavy gabardine mats. And, if the weather allows you, then take them off and you're in your character costume and then you put them on again. Yeah. And so I am looking at a new generation of people that are happy to get soaking wet and freezing cold. Because there is something exciting about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned Tristan Isolde, and someone was going on to me about seeing it in Nottingham. And I remember that performance. We were outdoors and I was kneeling as King Mark, cradling Tristan Isolde, and the rain was bouncing back up off the stage to head height. And we always had a thing where if it was getting too bad, I'd ask the audience. And I remember within the scene turning to the audience and saying, would you like us to continue or shall we call it a night? And they all said, we want you to carry on. So you did. And those moments are magic. And we do know how to do that. But it takes it out of you, and it is expensive. But it's expensive if you try to really keep those, particularly those technical production values. So you do have to go back more basic. But all of that is possible, and I don't want to be going back to anything, but I do think the essence of that, it is the essence of theatre. It's immediate. It has a rawness, and we always used to play outside and then we could bring it inside. Yeah. We used to change our instrumentation. Outside it was accordions, trumpets, whatever, bring it inside and then you could have a bit of electric guitar. But I think that sort of flexibility and that physical robustness that basically you have to survive will serve us in the future.
Yeah, well, Kneehigh generally, it's become over 40 years a very well-known company worldwide. It's been, you've been on Broadway in the West End, done some massive shows, but you seem to want to keep everything very small and focused and reactive, so you can change direction quite quickly. You don't want to be stuck in the same rut. So in some ways, the current crisis, you could see it as another provocation that makes you rethink and change direction, could you?
It is a provocation, and I mean it's slightly deluding yourself, but it is an interesting time, and it was, it's become a cliche, but it has revealed, obviously not just in theatre, but it has revealed what was broken.
Yeah.
And I've actually been going on for quite some time, but I think we need to press the reset button.
Yeah.
There was a period where things were, and very nice January, February to go to California. We always went to America, and that boosted the coffers. But President Trump screwed that up. It's pretty much impossible to go to America prior to COVID-19. And then the Globe was fantastic when, we created all sorts of shows there, and it was a home, and it became a community. So that was very difficult when that kind of came to an end. But 12 years or however many years of Tory austerity, it's bite-sized chunks being taken out of council. So, it's such a struggle for theatres. So it is time to reinvent. Please, could we get rid of the Tories? Please, could we get rid of all the terrible people in power everywhere at the moment?
Yeah, because last time we spoke was when you were rehearsing for Dead Dog in Liverpool, and 6 years ago. And at that time, you were talking about the problems with austerity from the government and the rise of the right wing across Europe. And in some ways, the current crisis, it's not replaced it. It's emphasised some of those divisions, and Brexit, I suppose, as well, which is still there as well, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah, we're crashing out of that and blaming Europe, aren't we?
Yeah.
But Dead Dog in a Suitcase, where we ended up screaming, "Bring it all down and start again." It occurred to me, hang on, we didn't mean it, not literally.
I was talking to Paul Hunter last week about the show that he's finally getting in front of an audience quite soon. And I was talking to him particularly about the last show of his that I saw, which was about Chaplin and Stan Laurel, where the stage, it looked like a playground. And that's reminded me of the Dead Dog and of quite a few of your sets, actually. And it sounds, the way you describe the Barns, it sounds like it's a massive playground, and play is really important for your process, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Play and enjoyment. We were talking about Ken Robinson and education, but I think it's become more and more accentuated how you have to get it right. Yeah. And various people that come into Kneehigh, they're just that haven't had that background of play or whatever. We work very hard to go, not particularly interested in you getting it right. There's more. What else can be found? And he'll have said that as well, Ken Robinson. You have to embrace getting it wrong, because if you're just going to get it right, you're never going to come up with anything new. But people should be encouraged to play, and that's often mistaken. There's a cultural sort of divide, isn't there? Which, whether it's me or Emma Rice or Carl Groves, actually, who none of us went to university, but the implication is that, without that academic background, we can't honour the work seriously enough. And, I think that's so wrong. I think the intelligence of Carl Groves or Emma Rice or Paul Hunter, there is such a profound intelligence which reveals meaning, but play is very important to that. And
it's through play that you create these shows. You're describing the Calvino stories that I know you're doing something else based on that. And first thought is, how the hell do you do that on stage? How do you get a P who gets up and talks? But that's the process, is it, of finding a way of getting that across to an audience? That process, and I always love those sort of challenges. Yeah. As Bill Mitchell did, tin drum. A lot of people would rack their brains about, oh my God, how do I do a child in the womb that knows everything and then is born and decides not to grow? Well, it's a sort of brilliant challenge. Somebody self-combusts and turns into a flock of birds, or what, these are brilliant challenges to find something. But you do have to embrace, that strikeout document at the end, it says, hold your nerve.
ancient Kneehigh proverb, when you're trying to come up with a wooden frock, hold your nerve, don't just be waiting for a designer to come up with an idea. That, of course, everybody's individual skills as a director or as a musician or as an actor or as a writer or as a designer, etc., need to be honoured. But I think, what happens with Paul, that kind of collective energy as well, and the chemistry that you create in the room, if you can stay open to that, will give you rich opportunity. And of course, take the work seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously, I would say.
Yeah.
And here's a really, it'll sound simplistic, but within our world and this theatre culture at the moment, I often feel like saying to people, oh God, just remember you enjoy performing. I mean, I bloody love it. God, to get off Zoom and to be on the stage, I actually don't need to know what I'm doing particularly. I just love being on stage. So this notion that, oh God, I'm terrified before I go on, this has never quite chimed with me. You're excited, yeah. You need a bit of adrenaline, but we do it because we love it, not because it makes any kind of business sense.
Where does that come from, do you think, in you? Where does that desire to perform come from?
I'm probably an adrenaline junkie because I think left to my own devices, I've been fairly active in the last 5 months, but I suspect I don't think I'll ever become a couch potato. I never had a TV. We didn't have a TV at home until I was about 15. I never got into sitting watching television particularly, but I can certainly feel my metabolism slowing down. And adrenaline, you sort of create the best part of yourself. All your senses are heightened. You're physically fitter. Your balance is better. Your coordination is better. And I love that state as opposed to my probably more natural state of shuffling around fairly morose.
Yeah.
You're much more alive, you're just much more alive. The best, everything, touch wood, works better. So it's probably as simple as that. And, I don't know in this last lockdown with everyone going on, trying to make theatre's still here, theatre's important, we've still got to keep rich. I don't know how important theatre is, but there is something fundamental and essential about the collective experience and the collective sharing of it. I mean, me and Emma used to privately call Kneehigh the Church of the Lost Cause. Neither of us are religious particularly, but just that notion that, people love to sing and dance and be in part of a collective experience. It is a new church. And I'll be really interested to see as well. I suspect people will love coming to a field for events, and we all love to be told stories in whatever way, don't we?
Yeah.
And as I say, that takes me through to next summer.
Yeah. And
at the moment, there's a wealth of ideas for new shows, etc. But I don't want to put myself in that position of near madness of trying to work out when theatre's going to be able to open and when they can pay for things, and and indeed how much of the public are going to be able to afford theatre.
That was Mike Shepherd, founder and co-artistic director of Kneehigh. To read the Strikeout strategy document and other information about the company and its past and future work, see www.kneehigh.co.uk or follow We Are Kneehigh on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.